In the beginning, when the High King of all realms did first stretch forth his hand across the infinite void, there was naught but a silence so profound it echoed through the darkness, like the ringing of a great bell, yet unstruck. The deep was a vast and formless sea, unlit by any candle and unmapped by any mariner. Yet, the spirit of the king, like a shimmering mist or the breath of a dragon over a cold lake, moved upon the face of those waters, and the king, clad in light that no mortal eye could then behold, spoke a word that shattered the silence forever. "Let there be light," he commanded, and the light did burst forth, not as a flickering torch, but as a golden dawn that chased the shadows into the corners of the firmament. The king saw the light, that it was good, and he divided the light from the darkness, naming the golden glow day and the heavy shadow night. Thus, the first glass of the great hourglass was turned, marking the evening and the morning of the first day. On the second day, the king fashioned a great vaulted ceiling, a firmament of azure and sapphire, to divide the waters which were under the vault from the waters which were above it. It was like the dome of a cathedral so vast that the stars would later be but dust upon its rafters. And it was so. On the third day, the king commanded the waters under the heaven to be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. From the churning foam rose the great continent, with mountains like jagged teeth and valleys like the folds of a velvet cloak. The king called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. Then he bid the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself. Suddenly, the gray stone was covered in a mantle of emerald green. Oaks stood like sentinels, and vines crept like intricate embroidery across the hillsides. Then did the king ordain the great lanterns of the sky on the fourth day. He made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, like a golden crown for the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, like a silver brooch for the moon. He set the stars also, scattered like diamonds upon a blacksmith's anvil, to be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years. On the fifth day, the king peopled the waters and the air. Great leviathans, plated in scales of iron and gold, stirred the depths, and every winged fowl after his kind soared above the earth in the open firmament. He blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." On the sixth day, the king brought forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth. The forests teemed with harts and wolves, and the plains with great stallions, but the crowning work of the High King remained. In the quiet of the afternoon, he took the red clay of the earth and fashioned a man, breathing into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This man, Adam, he placed in a garden eastward in Eden, a place of such beauty that the flowers sang in the breeze, and the rivers ran with the clarity of melted diamonds. In the midst of the garden stood the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The king commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Yet, finding the man alone, the king caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he took one of his ribs and made thereof a woman, Eve, to be his helpmeet and companion. They dwelt in the garden, unashamed and pure, walking with the king in the cool of the day. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the king had made. Clad in scales of shifting iridescent emerald and charcoal, it approached the woman with whispers like the rustle of dry leaves. "Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" The woman replied that they might eat of the fruit, save for the tree in the midst, lest they die. But the serpent, with a tongue like a flickering flame, hissed, "Ye shall not surely die, for the king doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the tree was pleasant to the eyes and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Immediately, the golden light of the garden seemed to dim, and a chill wind blew through the trees for the first time. Their eyes were opened, and they knew they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons of green. When they heard the voice of the king walking in the garden, they hid themselves among the thickets. But the king called unto Adam, Where art thou? Adam confessed his fear and his nakedness. The king asked, Hast thou eaten of the tree? Adam blamed the woman, and the woman blamed the serpent. Then did the high king pronounce his judgment. Upon the serpent he placed a curse to crawl upon its belly in the dust. Unto the woman he decreed sorrow in conception. Unto Adam he said, Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also, and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. Dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return, the king declared. Yet, in his mercy, he made for them coats of skins to replace their fragile leaves, the first blood shed in the world to cover their shame. He then sent them forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence they were taken. At the east of the garden, he placed cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Thus began the long trek of man through the wilderness of the world, away from the golden spires of the king's first home. They labored under a sun that now burned and a rain that now chilled, carrying with them the memory of the garden and the weight of their choice. Adam tilled the earth with a heavy heart, finding the soil stubborn and the weeds plentiful. Eve labored by his side, her spirit tempered by the hardship of the journey. They built a shelter of stone and timber, a humble keep against the elements. In time, Eve bore a son, Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. As the boys grew, the world beyond the garden began to take shape. Cain became a tiller of the ground, a man of the earth and heavy labor, while Abel was a keeper of sheep, finding solace in the quiet hills and the gentle bleating of his flock. They lived under the shadow of the lost paradise, a constant reminder of the glory they had traded for knowledge. The seasons turned, the first winters bringing frost to the valleys, and the first summers parching the fields. They learned the language of the seasons, the timing of the harvest, and the needs of the beasts. Yet, the memory of the king's voice remained, a haunting melody in the wind, a promise of a presence they could no longer see but could never truly forget. The world was no longer the seamless tapestry of the creation week. It was fractured, beautiful still, but touched by the gray rot of the fall. The animals, once docile, now looked upon one another with wary eyes. The sky, though vast, often bore the weight of heavy, weeping clouds. Adam and Eve, the first lords of this realm, were now its most diligent servants. They wore their coats of skins with a mixture of gratitude and grief, symbols of the king's provision and the cost of their rebellion. They taught their sons the stories of the beginning, of the light and the void, of the serpent and the tree. Cain listened with a furrowed brow, his hands stained with the dark loam of the fields. Abel listened with a soft gaze, his fingers idly stroking the wool of a young lamb. The legacy of Eden was passed down not in gold or jewels, but in words and work, a heritage of hope and a burden of bone. As the years stretched into decades, the small family expanded. The silence of the wilderness was broken by the cries of infants and the laughter of children. They moved across the land, seeking better pastures and richer soil. The memory of the garden became a legend, a tale told around the hearth fires in the deep of night. But the flaming sword still burned at the gate, a beacon in the distance that none dared approach. The High King, though distant, was not gone. He watched from his celestial throne, his eyes seeing the hearts of men as clearly as he saw the stars. The stage was set for the next chapter of the human story, a tale of brothers and blood, of sacrifice and pride, unfolding under the wide, watchful sky of a world that was once perfect and was now, like its inhabitants, longing for a restoration it could barely imagine.